There is a moment each night when the guard at the gate of your mind begins to fall asleep. The rational mind softens. The body releases its grip on the day. The identity you defended from morning until evening becomes briefly negotiable. Most people waste this moment. They fall into sleep carrying the same worries, the same resentments, the same unfinished arguments, the same silent predictions of tomorrow's failure. Then, they wake up inside the reality those final thoughts prepared. But a trained mind treats midnight differently. It does not enter sleep as an accident, it enters sleep as a command. The final minutes before unconsciousness are not empty. They are the writing room where tomorrow's version of you is quietly drafted. You were taught, somewhere along the way, that sleep is the absence of your life, that it is the pause between the real moments, the blank space between chapters, the darkness between days. You were taught to treat it as collapse, as the body's surrender, as the mind finally going quiet after the noise of existence. That teaching is incomplete, and the incompleteness of it has cost you more than you know. Sleep is not the absence of your life. Sleep is the processing chamber where your life is quietly organized, filed, reinforced, and rehearsed. What you bring to the threshold of sleep does not disappear the moment your eyes close. It is carried inward. It becomes instruction. The subconscious mind does not rest when the conscious mind sleeps. It does not take a break, go dark, or suspend its operations. It continues working. It continues building. It continues translating the emotional residue of your day into the architecture of your inner world. While you dream, it reorganizes the material you gave it before you closed your eyes. This is not a new discovery hidden in some obscure psychological text. The ancient keepers of inner knowledge understood this principle long before modern science began measuring brain waves. They understood that the threshold between waking and sleeping was a sacred doorway, a place where the instructions of the day could be gently amended before they were pressed into the deeper record. You are currently living inside a script. That script is not random. It was written line by line through the accumulated emotional repetitions of your life. Every night you fell into sleep feeling unworthy, it added a sentence to the script that said you are unworthy. Every night you rehearsed the worry before sleeping, it strengthened the chapter that told the subconscious mind, this is what we expect. Every night you carried resentment into the dark received it as instruction. Most people never examine the script they are living inside. They wake up and wonder why the same patterns keep returning. They wonder why the same relationship wounds reappear in different faces. They wonder why money slips away each time it arrives. They wonder why the confidence they felt momentarily on Monday has dissolved by Wednesday. They look outward for the cause. The cause is inward. The script is inward, and the script is being written every night. The belief that sleep is passive is not merely an intellectual misunderstanding. It is a spiritual blindness that causes the most vulnerable hours of your existence to remain unguarded, unintentional, and surrendered entirely to whatever noise the day left behind. If the last sound you hear each night is anxiety, the subconscious records anxiety as the dominant frequency of your identity. If the last feeling you carry into the dark is defeat, the deeper mind registers defeat as the operating assumption. This is why the morning so often feels like a continuation rather than a beginning. Because it is. The subconscious does not reset at sunrise. It resumes. It picks up precisely where the night left it. It continues broadcasting the signal it received at the threshold. And so the same emotional weather moves through your days, not because the external world has conspired against you, but because the internal record has not yet been rewritten. You are not a passive receiver of your life. You are, at the deepest level, its author. But you have been writing unconsciously. You have been leaving the pen on the floor each night and letting the fears, the anxieties, the accumulated resentments of the day scratch their messages into the record while you slept. The results of unconscious authorship are the life you currently see around you that does not match the life you know you were meant to inhabit. Here is what replaces this false belief. The pre-sleep threshold is a programming chamber, not a metaphor, not a poetic description, a literal designation for what this interval of time actually is, what it does, and what it is capable of doing when it is used with intention and understanding. The moments between your last waking thought and the onset of full unconsciousness are among the most powerful moments in your entire day. Not the most dramatic, not the loudest, the most powerful. The false belief says sleep is downtime. The Codex says sleep is production. The false belief says what you think before sleep does not matter. The Codex says what you feel before sleep is the final instruction that the subconscious receives before it begins its deepest work. And the deepest work of the subconscious mind is this: confirming, reinforcing, and rehearsing whatever it has come to accept as the truth of who you are. When you begin to understand this, everything changes. The night is no longer something that happens to you. The night is something you can learn to use. This is what the Night Codex was written to teach. This audiobook is a codex. It does not offer motivation. It does not promise easy transformation through simple repetition of pleasant phrases. What it offers is a transmission of understanding, a map of the threshold, and a precise method for using the most underestimated window of your day to rewrite the subconscious script that is currently shaping your perception, your emotion, and the reality you are drawing toward you. In the section ahead, you will be shown the hidden mechanism. You will learn how the subconscious receives and stores emotional assumptions. You will understand why repeated emotional states at the threshold of sleep become the operating identity that shapes every waking hour. You will see how the inner architecture of your days is not built in the daylight, but in the dark. After the mechanism is revealed, you will be brought to the diagnostic mirror. This is the part of the Codex that will ask you to look at your own patterns without flinching. You will learn to recognize how your current nighttime habits are manifesting as the emotional weather of your mornings, the conversations that keep recurring, the opportunities that keep arriving incomplete, and the version of yourself that keeps appearing in the mirror no matter how many times you try to leave it behind. Then you will be shown how to read false signals. Not every discomfort before sleep is a signal from reality. Not every desire you carry into the night is a genuine aspiration. The Codex will teach you to distinguish between what is authentic spiritual instruction and what is anxiety, projection, or wishful thinking wearing the costume of manifestation. The center of this Codex is the protocol itself. The Midnight Method is not a collection of affirmations. It is a sequence, a structured, intentional movement through the threshold, from the waking state into the sleep state that carries a specific emotional assumption with it. You will learn each stage of that sequence. You will understand why each stage exists, and you will understand what breaks the method and what preserves its integrity. Finally, you will be shown advanced application. The method does not belong only to one area of life. It can be calibrated toward confidence, toward love, toward financial identity, toward healing, toward discipline, toward spiritual clarity. The advanced section of this codex will show you how to build what the archive calls a personal night codex, a living document of your own subconscious reprogramming written in the language of felt assumption and conscious repetition. By the time this transmission is complete, you will understand something that most people never discover. You will understand that the most important work of your life does not happen in the middle of the day. It happens at the edge of consciousness. It happens in the quiet interval when the guard at the gate begins to fall asleep and the door to the deeper chamber briefly stands open. That interval is brief. Perhaps 20 minutes, perhaps less. But 20 intentional minutes at the threshold of sleep, practiced consistently across days and weeks and months, can rewrite a subconscious script that has been running for decades. This is not an exaggeration. This is the principle that the ancient keepers of inner knowledge built entire schools around. It has been buried under centuries of distraction and centuries of teaching people to treat sleep as an accident rather than an act of authorship. You are not here by accident. This transmission is reaching you because some part of you already sensed that what happens at night matters more than what happens in the morning. That sensing was correct. If the language of this codex feels familiar, as if you have always known that reality operates this way but could not find the map, subscribe to the third library. There are more codices waiting to be opened, and the library does not close. Before you can use the midnight method, you must understand the law that makes it operative. Without understanding the law, the method becomes a ritual. And a ritual without understanding is performance. The subconscious mind does not respond to performance. It responds to something far more precise. The law is this: the subconscious mind accepts as truth whatever the emotional body repeats with consistency and conviction in a state of reduced conscious resistance. Read that again slowly, because every word in that sentence is load-bearing. The subconscious does not accept everything you think. You think thousands of thoughts each day. Most of them do not alter your subconscious identity at all because most of them are accompanied by little emotional intensity, and they occur during states of high conscious alertness. The critical factor is not volume. It is not repetition alone. It is the combination of emotional resonance and reduced resistance. This is where sleep becomes the key. Because sleep is, by definition, a state of progressively reduced conscious resistance. As you move toward sleep, the analytical gatekeeping function of the conscious mind begins to weaken. The faculty that would normally evaluate a thought and say that is not true, that cannot happen, that is not who I am, begins to dissolve. And in that dissolution, the door to the subconscious opens wider than at almost any other point in your waking experience. The ancient metaphysical practitioners understood this intuitively. The gate they described was not a metaphor for casual mental filtering. It was a description of a real cognitive function, the critic, the evaluator, the identity enforcer, the part of your mind that polices incoming information to ensure it is consistent with what you already believe yourself to be. When that gatekeeper is alert, it is extraordinarily powerful. It will reject experiences, filter perceptions, and dismiss evidence that contradicts the current inner script. This is why telling yourself something positive in the middle of the day so often produces no result. The gatekeeper is awake and on duty. It hears the positive statement, it compares it against the stored identity record, it finds them inconsistent, and it files the new statement in the category of wishful thinking rather than true belief. But at the threshold of sleep, the gatekeeper weakens. And in that weakening, an assumption delivered with emotional conviction can slip past the guard and land directly in the subconscious archive, not as a wish, not as a hope, as an accepted reality. Now, here is the deeper layer of the law. The subconscious mind does not distinguish between what is factually occurring in the external world and what is being vividly experienced internally. When you hold a clear, emotionally charged inner scene while hovering at the edge of sleep, the subconscious receives it as an event, not as a fantasy, not as a rehearsal, as a lived occurrence. This is precisely why your nighttime fears manifest as powerfully as your nighttime intentions. A fear held with emotional intensity at the threshold of sleep is not processed differently from a desired outcome held with the same intensity. Both are received by the deeper mind as instruction. Both are filed as evidence of what is real. Both are used to calibrate the operating frequency from which you will meet the next day. The law makes no moral judgments. It does not distinguish between useful assumptions and harmful ones. It does not protect you from the fears you rehearse. It simply does what it has always done. It confirms, strengthens, and externalizes whatever emotional state you have rehearsed with consistency during the periods of lowest conscious resistance. This is why some people seem to age into their fears, not because life punishes them, but because decade after decade they have been faithfully rehearsing the same emotional assumptions at the threshold of sleep, and the subconscious has faithfully built a life that reflects those assumptions back at them. The mirror is always accurate. It simply reflects the inside, not the outside. The law also operates in reverse. This is what the midnight method exploits with precision. If the subconscious accepts as true whatever is emotionally rehearsed in a state of reduced resistance, then deliberately presenting a chosen emotional assumption at the threshold of sleep, night after night, with clarity and genuine inner feeling, will gradually register that assumption as the new operating truth. Not because you have tricked the subconscious cannot be tricked, but because you have given it consistent, emotionally resonant evidence that a new version of your identity is real. And the deeper mind, being the loyal archivist that it is, will begin to update the record. The update does not happen in a single night. This must be stated clearly. The law operates like water on stone, slow, patient, cumulative. A single night of conscious pre-sleep work will not overwrite 20 years of unconscious rehearsal. But 30 nights will begin to soften the record. 60 nights will begin to rewrite it. And 120 nights, practiced with genuine emotional engagement and consistent intention, can produce what most people would describe as a complete transformation of identity. Though it is more precise to call it a restoration. The restoration of the self that was always beneath the accumulated script. This is the law that governs the midnight method. The pre-sleep threshold is not a mystical shortcut. It is a consistent access point to the layer of mind where identity is stored and where identity can be deliberately revised. There is another dimension to this law that must not be overlooked. The subconscious mind is not a passive storage chamber. It is an active transmission system. What is stored inside it radiates outward as the frequency from which you perceive, interpret, and attract the events of your life. This is the metaphysical extension of the psychological principle. When the subconscious carries an identity assumption, that assumption colors every perception. The person who carries a deep assumption of financial instability will perceive opportunity differently than the person who carries an assumption of abundance. Not because they are in different worlds, but because they are looking through different filters, and those filters determine which signals in the environment get noticed, which doors are seen, which conversations are initiated, and which possibilities feel within reach. This means that rewriting the subconscious script at night does not merely change how you feel in the morning. It changes what you see. It changes what you notice. It changes what you believe is available to you, and therefore it changes what you actually receive from the field of possibilities that reality continuously presents to every conscious being. The law beneath the event is not about manifesting by wishing. It is about calibrating the frequency from which you perceive, and by perceiving differently, engaging differently with the same world everyone else inhabits, but interpreting it through a completely altered inner lens. This is why two people can live seemingly parallel lives, similar circumstances, similar starting points, and arrive at entirely different destinations. One has been unconsciously rehearsing limitation. One has been consciously rehearsing expansion. The difference is not luck. The difference is the nightly archive. The midnight method is built on this law, not around it, not inspired by it, built directly on the precise mechanism that this law describes. Every step of the protocol exists because of a specific aspect of how the subconscious receives, stores, and transmits emotional assumption. Understanding the law is not optional preparation. It is the foundation without which the method collapses into empty ritual. You now know what the law is. In the next section, you will learn what happens when people encounter this threshold every night and do not know what they are doing to themselves. Every night, without knowing it, most people perform a ritual. It is not called a ritual. It is not recognized as a ritual. It is simply called going to sleep. But the invisible mechanics of what occurs in those final waking minutes are as precise and consequential as any ceremony performed with deliberate intention. The difference is that this ceremony is performed unconsciously, and unconscious ceremonies tend to confirm whatever the performer already fears. Most people believe that what they think and feel before sleep does not matter, because sleep will erase it. They believe the mind resets. They believe the morning is a genuinely fresh start, disconnected from the emotional content of the night before. This belief is so widespread and so deeply embedded in ordinary culture that it operates below the level of examination. Nobody questions it. It is simply assumed. But the morning is not a fresh start. The morning is a continuation. The emotional frequency that was present at the threshold of sleep becomes the baseline from which the waking mind begins its operations. The subconscious does not reset, it resumes, and it resumes from the precise point where the final conscious impression was made. Consider what most people actually do in the hour before sleep. They scroll through information designed to provoke reaction. They replay the failures of the day in quiet internal monologue. They rehearse arguments that did not happen but feel imminent. They review financial fears under the guise of responsible planning. They imagine conversations going wrong. They catalog everything that remains undone, unsolved, and uncertain. This is not laziness. It is not personal failure. It is what happens when a being of extraordinary subconscious power has never been shown what the threshold is for. The mind, left without instruction, defaults to processing unresolved material, and the unresolved material of most lives is predominantly composed of fear, doubt, and lack. The tragic irony is this: the very intelligence that makes human beings capable of memory, anticipation, and imagination is the same faculty that, when left unguided at the threshold of sleep, ensures that yesterday's anxiety becomes tomorrow's architecture. When you rehearse financial worry in the minutes before sleep, you are not being responsible. You are not solving the problem. You are writing the problem more deeply into the subconscious record. You are filing a message that says, "This is who I am. This is what I expect. This is the reality I inhabit." And the subconscious, loyal to its instructions, will organize your perception the following day to confirm exactly that filing. When you rehearse a relationship conflict before sleep, turning it over and over with emotional heat, you are not processing it. You are reinforcing it. You are pressing the emotional charge of that conflict into the deeper archive, and the archive will respond by producing more sensitivity, more reactivity, more of the same emotional weather that made the conflict feel inevitable in the first place. When you fall asleep thinking about health anxiety, measuring your body's signals against fear diagnoses, comparing your symptoms against the worst possibilities, you are not being vigilant. You are programming the nervous system to remain in a state of alert, a state that the body interprets as evidence of threat, and a state that produces, over time, the very physical experiences of tension and depletion that the fear had predicted. This is the tragedy of unconscious repetition. It is not a moral failure, but it is a mechanism that, once understood, cannot responsibly be left unexamined. Most people misread the threshold in a second way. Even those who have encountered teachings about nighttime manifestation or pre-sleep affirmation often reduce the practice to surface repetition. They repeat words, they say phrases, they mechanically recite statements that describe a desired reality, but they do not feel. And the subconscious does not file words, it files feelings. A word without feeling is a vibration without signal. The subconscious receives no meaningful instruction from a statement delivered without genuine emotional resonance. This is why many people try affirmations for weeks or months and observe no change. They are broadcasting without transmission. They are pressing letters onto a page without ink. The third misreading is perhaps the most subtle and the most damaging. It is the belief that the current nighttime patterns are just habits without consequence. That thinking about tomorrow's stress before sleep is simply human nature. That lying awake with anxiety is simply what happens when life is difficult. That falling into worried sleep is an acceptable baseline that cannot be changed. This resignation is the most profound form of the misreading because it removes the only thing that makes change possible: the recognition that something is happening at the threshold and that you have the capacity to participate in what that something does. Most people do not believe they can control the texture of the minutes before sleep. They feel at the mercy of their thoughts. They feel that the anxiety arrives uninvited and that the rehearsal of tomorrow's fears is involuntary. They do not yet know that consciousness is a trainable instrument. They do not yet know that the threshold can be approached with intention. They do not yet know that the gate can be guarded by the sleeper rather than abandoned to whatever the day has left behind. The consequences of this collective misreading accumulate over years. A person who has spent a decade unconsciously reinforcing scarcity assumptions at the threshold of sleep has spent a decade building the precise inner architecture that makes scarcity feel inevitable, not because scarcity is their destiny, but because they have written it faithfully every night into the most receptive chamber of the mind. The same is true for loneliness, for unworthiness, for creative failure, for physical depletion, for spiritual disconnection. Every feeling rehearsed with consistency at the threshold has a corresponding life pattern that begins to emerge, not immediately, but inevitably. The mechanism does not have an off switch. It continues operating whether or not you know it exists. The question is not whether the threshold is doing something. It is always doing something. The question is whether you will begin to choose what it does. That choice begins with understanding. And the understanding is this: you are not simply falling asleep each night. You are rehearsing a version of yourself. You are issuing instructions to the deepest faculty of your mind. You are writing the subconscious script that will shape your perception, your emotion, and your experience of the next day and the next and the next. The night is not neutral. It never was. The best way to feel the weight of this mechanism is not through abstraction. It is through recognition. The examples that follow are not hypothetical. They are the lived patterns of people who have been performing the unconscious nighttime ritual without awareness of what they were building. Consider the person who struggles with money. Not because opportunity has never appeared, but because every night, in the hour before sleep, they rehearse the arithmetic of shortage. They calculate what is owed, what is insufficient, what could go wrong. They do this under the name of financial responsibility. They call it planning. But what they are doing at the threshold of the most receptive state of consciousness available to them is confirming an emotional identity. The identity of someone who does not have enough. The subconscious receives this confirmation faithfully. It files it. And in the morning, the same person looks at the world through the filter of insufficiency. Opportunities that might have appeared promising feel risky. Conversations about abundance feel unrealistic. Decisions that would move toward expansion get replaced by decisions that protect against the shortage that feels certain. Not because shortage is objectively certain, because shortage is the inner state that was rehearsed most recently and most emotionally at the last available threshold. This is not a personal character flaw. It is a mechanical consequence of an unexamined ritual. The money pattern is almost never about money. It is almost always about what was written at the threshold. Now consider the person who is lonely. Not because connection is unavailable, but because every night before sleep, they rehearse the evidence that they are fundamentally difficult to love. They review the day's interactions and extract from them every confirmation that they pushed someone away, said the wrong thing, were too much or not enough. They carry this quiet verdict into the dark. And the subconscious, diligent in its archival function, strengthens the identity record. The record that says, I am someone who is not chosen. The following day, this person enters the world vibrating at the frequency of that record. They do not announce it. They do not consciously broadcast it. But the inner assumption shapes every small decision, whether to initiate conversation, whether to allow closeness, whether to believe that a kind gesture is genuine or merely polite. The assumption pre-edits the available field of connection and confirms through the very behavior it produces that the lonely verdict was accurate. The loop is invisible from inside it, and it is reinforced every night. Consider someone who carries health anxiety into sleep. Not a clinical condition, but the ordinary habit of lying in the dark and cataloging physical sensations against imagined diagnoses. The slight pressure in the chest, the tiredness that will not lift, the ache that was not there last week. In the threshold state, the body is deeply suggestible. The nervous system, hovering at the edge of unconsciousness, is acutely responsive to emotional instruction. When the dominant emotional instruction is fear about the body, the nervous system does not differentiate between the imagined threat and a real one. It responds with the same cascade of tension, alertness, and physiological readiness that it would reserve for genuine danger. Over time, the person who rehearses health anxiety at the threshold may find that their body begins to produce the very physical experiences of depletion and sensitivity that the anxiety had predicted. Not through supernatural causation, but through the thoroughly documented relationship between the nervous system's baseline state and the body's physical responses to that state. The threshold does not create illness, but it can profoundly influence the body's baseline operating conditions. Consider the creative person, the artist, the writer, the builder, the designer, who lies awake before sleep, rehearsing inadequacy, comparing their work against those they admire, finding the distance between where they are and where they believe they should be, rehearsing the quiet conviction that their voice is not distinctive enough, their discipline not strong enough, their talent not original enough. This is perhaps the most painful of the unconscious rituals, because it wears the costume of ambition and self-improvement. But it is not ambition. It is self-erasure performed at the most receptive moment of the day. And the creative person who practices this ritual long enough will find that their best ideas arrive in the morning already compromised, already whispered beneath the threshold of expression, already bearing the watermark of the night before's conviction that they are not enough. The creative work of a person who consistently rehearses unworthiness at the threshold will carry that frequency no matter how technically skilled it becomes. The audience senses something in the work that the creator cannot name. The creator calls it lack of confidence. The Codex calls it a subconscious identity that has not yet been aligned with the creative aspiration being pursued. Consider the person in a relationship that has grown cold, not broken, not absent, but contracted, diminished. They lie beside someone and carry into sleep a collection of grievances, interpretations, and quiet predictions. Tonight, the dominant feeling is distance. Tomorrow, it will be distance. Because the subconscious was given distance as its last instruction, and it will organize the perception of tomorrow's interaction through the filter of that distance. Small, warm gestures will be missed or misread. Moments of potential softness will be filtered through the expectation of withdrawal. The gap that was felt last night will seem confirmed by what is perceived today. And what is perceived today will be brought to the threshold tonight as fresh evidence. The loop closes. The script thickens. The relationship moves not toward what both people actually want, but toward what the nightly ritual has established as the dominant emotional assumption. Consider the person building something, a business, a creative project, a new beginning. They have genuine desire. They have genuine skill. But every night at the threshold, they rehearse the fear of failure. They imagine the scenarios in which the project collapses. They prepare themselves for the disappointment. They call this preparation. They call it realistic thinking. But the subconscious receives only the emotional charge of that preparation, and the emotional charge is failure. Anticipated, embodied, emotionally rehearsed failure. The preparation does not protect against failure. It rehearses the identity of someone who expects to fail. And from that identity, the decisions made in daylight hours will carry a subtle but consistent lean toward retreat, toward self-sabotage, toward the unconscious confirmation of what the threshold has established as the inner truth. Consider the person who wants to change something fundamental about themselves. A behavior they have carried for years, a pattern they have recognized and condemned. They fall asleep each night after another day of internal judgment, criticizing the pattern, condemning themselves for repeating it, feeling the weight of their own disappointment. The subconscious receives this judgment as identity, not as the aspiration for change, but as the identity of the person who has this problem. And an identity held at the threshold becomes the operating assumption from which tomorrow begins. Real change never comes from condemning the pattern at the threshold. Real change comes from assuming, at the threshold, the identity of the person who has already moved through and beyond the pattern. This is the precise difference between unconscious repetition and the midnight method. And that difference is everything. Consider the person who wakes up tired, not merely from insufficient sleep, but from sleep that was entered in a state of unresolved tension. Their body rested, but their nervous system never released its grip, because the instruction given at the threshold was alertness, was vigilance, was the unresolved architecture of an anxious evening. The quality of sleep is not determined only by duration. It is influenced by the emotional state in which the threshold was crossed. These examples are not isolated. They are portraits of the same mechanism operating across different areas of life. The mechanism is neutral. It does not care which area it is expressing in. It simply reads the dominant emotional assumption presented at the threshold and uses it to calibrate the inner world accordingly. What each of these people shares is not a particular problem or a particular failure. What they share is an unexamined threshold, a doorway they have been walking through every night without knowing that the door exists, without knowing that they could choose what they carry through it, and without knowing that what they carry through it becomes the instruction that shapes the next day's experience. The threshold does not discriminate. The threshold does not protect. The threshold simply amplifies and archives whatever is brought to it. This is why the Codex exists, not to frighten, but to illuminate. Because what can be seen can be changed, and what can be changed at the threshold can change everything beyond it. The pattern does not announce itself. It does not arrive with a clear label explaining its origin. It appears as the weather of your mornings, as the texture of your days, as the conversations that seem to find you regardless of where you go or how intentional you try to be. It appears in the form of a life that feels strangely familiar, even when the circumstances are new. You wake up in a new situation and carry the same emotional geography into it. The faces change, the setting changes, but the feeling does not change. The feeling of being slightly behind. The feeling that something important is just out of reach. The feeling that you are almost there but never quite arriving. This is one of the primary signatures of an unexamined nighttime script. The morning emotional weather is perhaps the most immediate and legible signal. Pay careful attention to this. Not the obvious bad days, those carry their own explanations. Pay attention to the default emotional state you find yourself in during the first 20 minutes after waking. Before the day has given you any new information, before anything has happened, what is already present in the body? If what is already present is low-grade anxiety, the nighttime record contains a consistent instruction of threat. If what is already present is a faint sense of dread about the day ahead, the threshold has been consistently crossed, carrying rehearsed anticipation of difficulty. If what is already present is a weight of inadequacy, the archive has been filing inadequacy as the operating identity for some time. The morning weather is not created by the morning. It was prepared the night before. You woke up inside a reality your final thoughts quietly assembled. The second way the pattern appears is through the recurring conversation. You may have noticed that certain themes follow you through different relationships, different environments, different life chapters, certain kinds of misunderstandings that keep occurring, certain emotional dynamics that keep repeating with different people. A specific kind of being overlooked, a specific kind of being challenged, a specific kind of feeling invisible or undervalued. These recurring conversations are not evidence of bad luck or cosmic persecution. They are evidence of a subconscious signal being consistently broadcast. Other people respond to the frequency you are carrying, not consciously. They do not decide to reinforce your inner story, but they are sensitive to it in ways they cannot articulate, and they tend to respond in ways that confirm what your inner state is already expecting. The third signature of the pattern is a specific quality of familiarity in what you attract. You meet someone new and something about the dynamic feels known. It feels like a story you have read before, and you have read it before, but not in an external book. You have read it in the inner archive. The dynamic that keeps appearing is not a coincidence, it is a frequency match. The subconscious has been broadcasting a particular identity assumption, and the external world keeps responding with a corresponding resonance. The fourth signature is the invisible ceiling. You reach a certain level in an area of your life, financial stability, creative recognition, relational depth, physical health, and then you stop. You feel resistance without a clear cause. You feel as if an unseen hand is keeping you at the threshold of something larger. This ceiling is rarely external. It is almost always the upper boundary of what the inner script permits. The subconscious has a record of your identity. And when your external life attempts to exceed that record, the subconscious creates the conditions for a return. Subtle self-sabotage, inexplicable hesitation, decisions that walk you back from the edge of the expansion you were beginning to inhabit. The ceiling is not permanent, but it cannot be raised from the outside. It can only be raised by revising the inner record, by returning to the threshold with a new assumption and writing it consistently until the deeper archive accepts it as the new operating truth. The fifth signature is exhaustion without external cause. You are sleeping. You are not overworking. You are doing what seems from the outside like an ordinary life. But you are tired in a way that does not respond to rest. This bone-level tiredness is one of the most overlooked indicators of a misaligned subconscious script. When the body is consistently entered into sleep in a state of unresolved emotional tension, the night's work is not restoration. It is continued processing of unresolved material. The body rests, but the system does not regenerate. The tiredness is the cost of carrying a dissonant script without interruption. The sixth signature is spiritual numbness, a sense of disconnection from your own intuition, a sense that the signs you used to notice have gone quiet, that the synchronicities have faded, that the sense of being part of something meaningful has dimmed. This numbness is often the result of a subconscious script that has been allowed to run on fear and scarcity long enough that it has narrowed the perceptual bandwidth through which synchronicity and signal can reach you. The signals do not stop. Reality does not withdraw its communications, but a consciousness that has been calibrated to the frequency of anxiety and lack develops a reduced sensitivity to the frequencies on which meaning, alignment, and guidance tend to arrive. The spiritual numbness is a diagnostic. It is telling you something about the state of the inner archive. The seventh signature is the loop. You resolve something, you release something. You feel the genuine relief of having moved past a particular pattern. And then, weeks or months later, the pattern returns wearing a slightly different arrangement of circumstances. The same emotional theme, the same inner experience, the same fundamental challenge disguised in a new setting. You do not understand why you keep returning to the same place. The loop returns because resolution at the surface level does not revise the archive at the depth level. You can intellectually understand a pattern, emotionally process a pattern, and consciously decide to leave a pattern behind and still return to it. Because the subconscious record, written nightly for years at the threshold, has not yet been rewritten. The loop is not a punishment, it is a diagnostic. It is the archive showing you that the record still needs revision. These 7 signatures, the morning emotional weather, the recurring conversation, the familiar dynamic in new settings, the invisible ceiling, the exhaustion without cause, the spiritual numbness, and the returning loop are the primary ways the unexamined nighttime script makes itself visible in daylight. You do not need to identify all 7 to recognize the pattern. Often, 1 or 2 are enough. What matters is the recognition. Because recognition is the beginning of the only process that can revise the record. If you have read this far and recognized yourself in one of these signatures, write the word threshold in the comments of this transmission. Not as performance, as acknowledgement, as a quiet declaration to the part of yourself that has always sensed that something is running beneath the surface of your days, and that you are finally ready to examine what that something is. The nighttime script does not merely show you what you think. It shows you what you actually believe, and these are not the same thing. You can consciously think that you are worthy of love, while your nighttime rehearsal is built entirely on the expectation of rejection. You can consciously affirm abundance, while the emotional content you carry to the threshold is constructed from the anticipation of shortage. You can consciously proclaim that you are ready for change, while the final emotional instruction you issue before sleep is a rehearsal of the familiar, the safe, the known, the limited. The gap between what you consciously profess and what you subconsciously rehearse is the precise width of the distance between the life you are living and the life you know belongs to you. The nighttime script is not your enemy. It is your most honest witness. It reveals the layer of belief that lies beneath the curated surface of your daytime presentation. And what it reveals is not who you are at the soul level. It is who you have been trained to expect yourself to be. These are not the same thing either. Look at what you rehearse at the threshold, and you will see what you secretly fear most. The person who rehearses money anxiety does not actually fear poverty. At the deeper level, they fear that they are fundamentally insufficient, that no matter how hard they work, no matter how carefully they plan, there will never be enough because they are not enough. Money is the surface form of the fear. The root is self-concept. Look at what you rehearse at the threshold, and you will see what you secretly worship. This sounds unusual, but it is accurate. Whatever holds your attention most powerfully in the vulnerable hours before sleep is what your consciousness is truly devoted to. Not devotion in the spiritual sense, Devotion in the sense of consistent, emotionally charged orientation. The person who returns to a particular wound every night is devoted unconsciously to that wound. Not because they want the pain, but because the wound has become the organizing principle of their identity, the thing around which everything else is arranged. Look at what you rehearse at the threshold, and you will see what you secretly expect. Not what you hope, not what you desire, what you genuinely, in the deepest operational sense, expect to receive from life. Expectation is not a surface thought, it is a felt conviction. It is the emotional posture the body assumes when it considers the future. The person who expects rejection does not merely think that rejection is possible. They feel, in the pre-sleep state, the emotional texture of rejection as a familiar environment. And the subconscious, reading that emotional texture, confirms rejection as the operating expectation. This is perhaps the most important diagnostic the nighttime script offers, because expectation, in the metaphysical sense understood by the keepers of this archive, is the primary creative force in a human life. Not desire, not intention, expectation. What you have come to feel in the body at the deepest available level of consciousness is what you have come to expect. And what you expect is what you draw toward you, not through magic, but through the filter it creates in your perception and the behavior it produces through your nervous system. Look at what you rehearse at the threshold, and you will see what you have been trained to fear about expansion. Every person who approaches a threshold of genuine growth encounters in the pre-sleep state the particular fear that their expansion would cost them. Fear of being seen and judged. Fear of exceeding those they love and losing their belonging. Fear of the responsibility that comes with becoming more. Fear of the unfamiliarity of a larger identity. These fears are not always conscious. They often arrive at the threshold dressed as practical concerns, realistic assessments, or responsible caution. But beneath the practical costume, they are fears of expansion itself, and they are writing that fear as instruction at the most receptive moment of the day. Look at what you rehearse at the threshold, and you will see the identity you have secretly agreed to occupy. There is a version of yourself that you are maintaining, often without knowing you are maintaining it, through the consistency of your nighttime emotional rehearsal. This version has particular characteristics, particular limitations, particular areas of life where it stops reaching, particular relationships it believes it cannot have, particular levels of success it believes it does not deserve. This agreed-upon version is not the truth of who you are, it is the script. And the script was written by accumulated experience, by what significant people in your early life taught you to expect, by the conclusions you drew from your first experiences of rejection and loss and disappointment, by the cultural and familial assumptions about what people like you are allowed to become. All of those sources contributed sentences to the script, and every night, without examination, you have been reading those sentences back to yourself at the threshold and strengthening the record. What the nighttime script reveals about you is not your nature. It is your narrative. And a narrative, unlike a nature, can be rewritten. This is the essential distinction the Codex makes. You are not your script. You are the author who has been reading an old script without realizing that the pen is still in your hand. The diagnostic mirror is not here to condemn what it shows. It is here to make visible what has been invisible. Because a script you cannot see cannot be revised. Only a script you can read, honestly and without self-condemnation, can be deliberately rewritten. What does your threshold reveal? If you can sit with that question, without judgment, for long enough to feel a genuine answer, you have crossed the first threshold of the Midnight Method. You have moved from unconscious repetition to conscious recognition. And that movement, simple as it sounds, is the most significant step in the entire process. The recognition does not require you to condemn what you find. The condemning of the pattern at the threshold is itself a repetition of the pattern. The recognition requires only this: to see what has been written, to understand that you wrote it without knowing, and to understand that the same hand that wrote it unconsciously can write something new with intention. You are not broken. You are not beyond recovery. You are not too old, too damaged, too set in your ways, or too entangled in your patterns to revise the record. You are precisely where you need to be to begin. Because you are reading the Codex, and the Codex does not reach people before they are ready. Before the protocol can be taught, the Codex must address the distortions, because the Midnight Method exists within a landscape of approaches that use similar language but operate from entirely different foundations. And some of those approaches, if mistaken for this one, will not only fail to produce results, but will actively reinforce the patterns you are attempting to release. The first distortion is forced affirmation. You may have encountered it already. It is the practice of repeating positive statements at the threshold without any felt connection to the content of those statements. Saying, "I am wealthy," over and over in the dark while the body is vibrating with the frequency of scarcity. Saying, "I am loved," while the emotional architecture of the moment is constructed from loneliness. Saying, "I am healthy," while the nervous system is calibrated to fear. The subconscious does not record the words. It records the feeling that accompanies the words. And if the feeling underneath the words is the opposite of what the words claim, the subconscious receives a contradictory transmission. In cases of severe contradiction, the deeper mind actually reinforces the feeling because the emotional content is more genuinely present than the verbal content. The forced affirmation becomes, ironically, an amplifier of the very state it was designed to overwrite. The Midnight Method is not built on affirmation. It is built on assumption. There is a critical difference. An affirmation is something you repeat until you believe it. An assumption is something you adopt as already true and feel from within that truth. The movement from affirmation to assumption is the movement from performance to genuine inner revision. And genuine inner revision is the only kind the subconscious archive recognizes. The second distortion is fantasy escapism. This is the practice of using the pre-sleep state to enter elaborate, pleasurable daydreams about a desired future without the element of felt truth. The experience feels enjoyable. It feels like imagination. But if the emotional baseline remains the same, if underneath the pleasant fantasy the body is still holding the assumption that the fantasy is not real and not available, the subconscious records not the content of the fantasy, but the emotional footnote attached to it. The footnote that says this is a dream, not a reality. Fantasy without felt truth is entertainment. The subconscious files entertainment differently from instruction. The Midnight Method is not about imagining a beautiful future from a distance. It is about inhabiting a chosen assumption from within. The scene is simple. The feeling is genuine. The position of the consciousness is inside the new assumption, not watching it from the outside. The third distortion is desperate manifestation ritual. This is perhaps the most energetically damaging of the distortions because it carries the highest level of emotional activation. The desperation pattern occurs when the desire is held at the threshold with an intensity born not from confidence but from lack. The feeling is not the feeling of already having. The feeling is the feeling of desperately needing. And the subconscious, receiving the emotional instruction of desperate need, confirms desperate need as the operating state. You cannot reach the feeling of having from the starting position of desperate wanting. They are different emotional frequencies. The body knows the difference, the subconscious knows the difference, and the transmission from the threshold will always carry the emotional frequency that is genuine in the body, not the desired frequency that is being performed on the surface. This is why the most emotionally activated pre-sleep manifestation rituals often produce the least movement. The activation itself, when it carries the texture of desperation and urgency, is broadcasting the very signal of lack that the method was designed to replace. Intensity of desire is not equivalent to clarity of assumption. The method requires the latter, not the former. The fourth distortion is the use of the threshold to process unresolved trauma without proper support. This codex speaks in the language of subconscious reprogramming and metaphysical interpretation, but it must speak clearly here. If you carry significant unresolved trauma, the pre-sleep threshold can become a chamber of re-exposure rather than a chamber of revision. Working with the threshold requires a baseline of sufficient emotional stability to choose the felt state you are moving into, rather than being overwhelmed by the felt state that arises uninvited. If the threshold is consistently dominated by intrusive material that does not respond to gentle redirection, that is a signal to seek appropriate grounded support alongside this practice, not instead of it. The Codex honors both the metaphysical and the human. They are not in conflict. They are complementary. The fifth distortion is superstitious sign reading. Some who practice pre-sleep intention will become hyper-vigilant about external evidence. They will scan the following day for confirmation that the method is working, treating every small coincidence as proof and every neutral event as failure. This anxious monitoring is itself a broadcast of the frequency of doubt. If the assumption were genuinely felt as true, it would not require constant verification. The monitoring reveals that the assumption has not yet been internalized, but is being watched from the outside. The genuine signal of the method working is not dramatic external evidence. It is a quiet internal shift, a morning that feels slightly lighter than the one before. A moment of recognition where a habitual reactive pattern does not arise. A decision made from expansion rather than contraction. A relationship interaction that carries a new quality. These subtle internal changes are the actual early evidence of subconscious revision, and they precede external change, always. The sixth distortion is mixing contradictory assumptions in a single session. Attempting to inhabit the assumption of abundance while simultaneously holding the assumption of romantic connection, while simultaneously working on health and discipline in a single pre-sleep session, is not ambitious. It is scattered. The subconscious does not receive scattered instruction clearly. One clear, deeply felt assumption delivered with genuine emotional resonance at the threshold will do far more work than 6 contradictory assumptions delivered with divided attention and diluted feeling. The Midnight Method asks for simplicity and depth, not complexity and breadth. One assumption, one scene, one feeling, fully inhabited. This is the protocol. And the distortions you have just read are precisely the things that reveal themselves when the protocol is violated, not as punishment, as feedback. The method is always honest about whether it is being practiced or merely performed. You have understood the law, you have seen the pattern, you have looked in the diagnostic mirror, you have learned to distinguish genuine practice from distortion. You are now ready to receive the method itself. The Midnight Method is a 7-stage sequence performed in the final 20 to 30 minutes before you enter sleep. It is not a ritual in the ceremonial sense. It is a precise movement of consciousness through a specific series of inner positions, each one building on the previous, each one serving a specific function in the overall transmission. The stages are not optional. Their sequence is not interchangeable. Each stage has a reason. Stage 1 is the cleansing of the day. Before you can write a new instruction at the threshold, you must create sufficient space within the emotional body to receive it. You cannot write on a page that is already covered. The cleansing of the day is the act of deliberately releasing the accumulated emotional charge of the preceding hours without analyzing it, without resolving it, without judging it. This is not the same as pretending the day was fine when it was not. You are not dismissing what was difficult. You are deliberately declining to carry it forward into the threshold. There is a difference between honoring what a day brought and being governed by it as you approach the most receptive state of consciousness available to you. A simple practice for the cleansing. Lie down in the darkness or in whatever pre-sleep position you occupy, and allow the day to appear to the mind as a series of images passing behind a translucent screen. You observe them. You do not reach for them. You do not pursue the arguments. Do not catalog the failures. Do not plan the responses. You simply observe them passing, as you might observe clouds moving across a sky, and allow them to continue moving without holding them in place. As each image or feeling passes, release it by name, not aloud necessarily, internally. Today, I release the tension of the morning. Today, I release the conversation that left me unsettled. Today, I release the worry about tomorrow. Today, I release the weight of what remains undone. You are not resolving these things. You are choosing not to carry them through the door of the threshold. They can be returned to tomorrow. Tonight, the threshold is reserved for something new. This cleansing process typically requires 5 to 10 minutes. For those carrying significant daily tension, it may require more in the beginning. As the practice deepens, the capacity to cleanse quickly and completely will develop. The body learns what it is being guided to do. Stage 2 is the selection of the one assumption. After the day has been released, you arrive at a cleared inner space. This is the space into which you will introduce the new instruction. But the new instruction must be precise. This is where most approaches to pre-sleep manifestation fail. They are vague. Vague instructions produce vague transmissions. The subconscious requires specificity of feeling, not specificity of circumstance, but specificity of identity. The assumption you select must be a statement of identity, not a description of what you want to happen, a description of who you are. The difference is crucial. I'm about to receive abundance is an aspiration. I am someone for whom financial ease is natural and expected is an identity assumption. The first is pointed outward toward a future event. The second is pointed inward toward a present state of being. Identity assumptions at the subconscious level precede and produce all external circumstances. The sequence runs from identity assumption to perceptual filter, to decision pattern, to behavioral output to external result. The beginning of the chain is the assumption. If you work only on the results without revising the assumption, you are attempting to change a river by rearranging the current without altering the source. Select one assumption, only one. Make it an identity statement. Feel into it before you move forward. Ask yourself, does this feel true somewhere in me, even faintly, even partially? If there is not even a faint resonance, the assumption may be too far from the current identity record for immediate use. Choose an assumption that has at least a small amount of inner recognition, even if it is not yet dominant. Stage 3 is the construction of the inner scene. You now have your assumption. You need a simple scene, not a film, not an elaborate narrative, a single moment, one image, one sensory impression, one brief inner experience that could only be occurring if the assumption were already true. If your assumption is that you are someone for whom financial ease is natural and expected, the inner scene might be as simple as the quiet feeling of paying a bill without dread. Not paying $1 million bill, just a bill. Without the familiar tightening in the chest, with the quiet ease of someone for whom this is simply part of an ordinary, stable financial life. The scene should be small and specific. The smaller and more specific it is, the more emotionally accessible it is. Vast scenes of extraordinary achievement tend to carry a faint emotional distance. The distance of someone watching a movie of a life they do not yet fully believe is theirs. Small scenes of ordinary lived truth within the new identity are far more penetrable to the emotional body and therefore far more effective as threshold transmissions. Construct the scene. Make it sensory where you can, not visually elaborate, but felt. What is the quality of the air? What is the weight of the experience in the body? Where in the physical form does this assumption feel most present? Let it become dimensional without becoming theatrical. Stage 4 is the inhabiting of the feeling. This is the heart of the method. The scene is not the transmission. The feeling is the transmission. The scene is simply a doorway that leads to the feeling. And the feeling is what the subconscious archives. The feeling you are seeking is not excitement, it is not euphoria, it is not intense joy. Those feelings, while pleasant, carry an edge of contrast with the ordinary state, and that edge can inadvertently signal to the subconscious that this is exceptional, not normal. The feeling you are seeking is something quieter, something more textured, something closer to the deep, calm, ordinary satisfaction of a life in which the assumption is simply, unremarkably, true. Settle into that feeling. Allow it to inhabit the body rather than performing it on the surface. Let the chest soften, let the jaw release, let the shoulders descend. The body follows the emotional instruction when the instruction is genuinely felt rather than mentally performed. This is the point at which the barrier between performance and genuine inner revision becomes most legible. You will know when you have crossed from performance into genuine inhabiting, because the body will respond differently. Something will settle. Something will ease. The inner state will feel not like you are creating something, but like you are remembering something that was always true. Stage 5 is the gentle repetition. While holding the feeling of the inhabited assumption, you repeat internally and gently the identity statement, not urgently, not forcefully. The way you might repeat the name of someone you love while falling asleep beside them, softly, naturally, with the quiet ease of something that is simply and obviously true. The repetition does two things. It anchors the feeling to a verbal declaration that the mind can follow as consciousness softens and approaches the edge of sleep. And it deepens the emotional register of the assumption by layering it into the progressive loosening of conscious resistance that occurs as the threshold approaches. 3 to 5 gentle internal repetitions paced with the breath carried on the exhalation is sufficient for most practitioners. The goal is not to say it many times. The goal is to say it truly even once and to be on the edge of sleep when that truth is felt. Stage 6 is the release into sleep. At some point in the process, often sooner than expected, the body will begin to pull you under. This is the moment of release, and the release must be allowed, not resisted. One of the most common errors in pre-sleep practice is attempting to hold the focus too long past the point of natural release. Holding too long creates effort. Effort creates tension. Tension contradicts the assumption being rehearsed and introduces the opposite of the surrendered, receptive state that makes the transmission effective. When the body begins to pull you towards sleep, allow it. Let the scene soften. Let the repetition slow. Let the feeling carry you, rather than carrying the feeling. The goal of the method is to arrive at the unconscious state, while the chosen emotional assumption is the last felt thing, not the last thought, the last feeling. Feelings linger longer at the threshold than thoughts do. The thought dissolves, but the feeling continues to color the inner state even as consciousness fades. If the chosen assumption is the last genuine feeling of the waking state, the subconscious receives it as the final instruction of the day. And the final instruction of the day is the one that shapes the first orientation of the following morning. Stage 7 is the morning record. The practice does not end at sleep. It includes a brief morning component that, if overlooked, costs the practitioner significant diagnostic information. Upon waking, before consulting any device, before speaking, before engaging with the demands of the day, take 60 seconds to feel the quality of the morning. Ask inwardly, without grasping, what is present? Not what I want to be present. What is actually here, in the body, in the emotional field, right now? Notice without judgment. You are not grading the result. You are reading the morning signal. Over time, the morning record will show you the trajectory of the practice. You will begin to notice, not dramatically but subtly, that the quality of the mornings is shifting, that the familiar emotional weather patterns are changing, that things are lighter, calmer, more open in the inner environment than they were before the practice began. These subtle morning changes are the earliest visible evidence of the archive being revised. Record them, not in an elaborate journal. A single word or phrase is sufficient. Write the quality of the morning. Over weeks and months, those recorded words will show you a map of the inner revision that is occurring beneath the level of dramatic event. And that map will be among the most valuable things you have ever created. This is the Midnight Method. 7 stages. A threshold practice. A nightly act of conscious authorship. A deliberate use of the most receptive interval in your day to write a new instruction into the deepest layer of the mind that shapes everything you see, feel, choose, and attract. The Midnight Method is precise, and its precision means that certain deviations from its correct application will produce not only a lack of results, but an active worsening of the subconscious conditions you are attempting to revise. These are not theoretical warnings. They are the patterns that appear most consistently in those who attempt the practice and find it unproductive. The first mistake is overcomplicating the inner scene. There is a tendency, particularly among those drawn to creative or imaginative thinking, to construct elaborate inner narratives that span minutes and contain multiple characters, settings, and emotional arcs. This elaboration is counterproductive. The complexity of the scene pulls the conscious mind back into its active analytical function at precisely the moment when the practice requires a softening of that function. An elaborate scene is a conscious exercise. A simple scene at the threshold of sleep is a subconscious transmission. Simplify. Return to the single moment. Return to the single sensory impression. The smaller and more specific the scene, the deeper the emotional access it allows. Complexity is the enemy of felt truth at the threshold. The second mistake is monitoring for results the day after the session. This behavior is extraordinarily common and extraordinarily destructive to the method's efficacy. Waking up and immediately scanning the day for evidence that last night's practice is producing results is not curiosity. It is doubt wearing the costume of hope. The scanning itself broadcasts the frequency of uncertainty, and uncertainty is the opposite of the assumed truth that the method is designed to install. The subconscious requires time to revise the archive. The revision is not a single event, it is a cumulative process. Looking for dramatic evidence after one session is the equivalent of planting a seed in the morning and digging it up in the afternoon to check whether it has grown. The act of checking prevents the very process you are hoping to observe. The third mistake is practicing with contradictory desires in the same session. You've already read about this in the section on distortions, but it bears emphasis here as one of the most frequent mistakes made by those who understand the method intellectually, but have not yet felt its precision in practice. The subconscious cannot receive multiple conflicting identity assumptions simultaneously. It will not average them. It will not weight them by your preference. It will simply receive a scattered, unclear transmission and file it as inconclusive. One session, one assumption, one scene, one feeling. The depth of the single transmission far outweighs the breadth of multiple competing ones. You will have other nights. The method is a practice, not an event. Each area of your life that you wish to revise can receive its own dedicated sessions over time. The fourth mistake is using the method as an avoidance tool. There is a subtle but important distinction between using pre-sleep practice to revise the inner script and using it to avoid the emotional reality of the day. If the practice becomes a means of bypassing genuine emotional processing, of using the pleasant inner scene to escape from something that genuinely requires acknowledgement and attention, the method will not produce its intended result. The cleansing of the day that precedes the assumption is precisely what prevents this mistake. If after the cleansing, a particular emotional reality persists and demands attention, honor it. The midnight method is not a substitute for genuine inner work. It is a complement to it. It operates most effectively when the emotional field is genuinely clear, not when it is suppressed beneath the performance of a desired state. The fifth mistake is practicing the method in a state of physical depletion without addressing the depletion. If the body is significantly exhausted, in a state of genuine physical need, the threshold will be crossed too quickly for the practice to have full effect. The practitioner will find themselves unable to hold the assumption before sleep arrives. This is not failure. This is physiology. In states of significant depletion, the priority is rest. The practice can be brief and gentle on those nights, a single repetition of the identity statement as the body releases, rather than the full 7-stage sequence. The 6th mistake is confusing the intensity of the feeling with the effectiveness of the practice. Some sessions will feel deeply resonant, some will feel flat or mechanical. The practitioner who experienced a deeply felt session the night before may approach the following night expecting the same depth and feel disappointed when it does not arrive with equal richness. This comparison is itself an instruction of inadequacy sent to the threshold. The sessions that feel mechanical but are performed with consistency and patience are not less effective than the ones that feel profound. The subconscious does not grade sessions by their emotional vividness. It grades them by their consistency and their felt truth, however quiet that truth may be on a given night. The 7th mistake is abandoning the practice before the threshold of revision has been crossed. Every persistent subconscious script has a duration and a depth that was built over years of unconscious repetition. The revision of that script will require a sustained practice period. Some practitioners experience notable shifts within 4 to 6 weeks. Others require 3 to 4 months of consistent practice before the archive shows clear evidence of change. The abandonment of the practice at the 4-week mark, because nothing dramatic has happened yet, is one of the most common ways the method fails people. Not because it stopped working, because they left before the threshold of cumulative effect was crossed. The 8th mistake is speaking about the practice to those who will introduce doubt into your field. The midnight method is a quiet practice. It is not designed to be defended or explained or justified to skeptical observers. The moment you begin defending it, you begin doubting it. And doubt, especially doubt spoken aloud in the hours before the practice, is one of the most potent interrupters of the threshold transmission. Keep the practice private, not because secrecy is magical, but because what is exposed to ridicule before it has fully taken root in your own conviction is vulnerable to being uprooted by the quality of another person's disbelief. The 9th mistake is using the method to attempt to control external events rather than revise internal assumptions. If the intention going into the practice is a specific external outcome, the arrival of a particular person, the occurrence of a specific event, the behavior of someone else, rather than the revision of an internal identity assumption, the method is being misapplied. You cannot use the midnight method to control the external world. You can use it to revise the inner world. And a revised inner world tends to draw toward itself external circumstances that are consistent with the new assumption. But the mechanism is internal, not coercive. The 10th mistake is not developing any consistency in the time and conditions of the practice. The subconscious responds to pattern. A practice performed consistently at the same approximate time, in the same conditions of quiet and stillness, will deepen in effectiveness as the body and mind learn to recognize the threshold ritual and move into the receptive state more readily. Inconsistency of timing and environment produces inconsistency of the transmission's depth. Once the midnight method has been practiced consistently for several weeks, and the practitioner has developed a reliable felt sense for the difference between performance and genuine assumption, the practice can be extended and deepened into the full spectrum of life. This advanced application does not change the protocol. The 7 stages remain identical. What changes is the sophistication with which the practitioner selects assumptions, constructs scenes, and reads the morning record as an ongoing diagnostic. In the area of confidence and identity, the midnight method becomes most powerful when it is used not to produce a feeling of high performance or outward certainty, but to inhabit the quiet, unflinching assumption of basic self-belonging. The most durable confidence is not excitement about one's abilities. It is a settled, unquestioned sense that you have the right to occupy the space you are in. The threshold scene for this assumption is not a triumph. It is an ordinary moment of ease in your own skin. A conversation entered without the familiar preparation for rejection. A room walked into without the habitual assessment of whether you are welcome there. The subconscious, when this assumption is consistently reinforced at the threshold, will gradually produce a baseline shift in the nervous system's default posture toward the world. The practitioner does not become arrogant, they become settled. And settled confidence is far more powerful in every area of life than the performed, fragile confidence that collapses under pressure. In the area of love and relationship, the assumption must be an assumption about your identity in relation, not a manifestation of a specific person. The assumption might be that you are someone who gives and receives love with openness and ease, that you are someone for whom genuine connection is natural and available, that you are someone who moves through relationships without the habitual armor that your earlier experiences taught you to wear. When this assumption is consistently inhabited at the threshold, the perceptual filter through which you interpret other people begins to shift. The same behaviors that previously read as rejection will be interpreted differently. The same offerings of connection that previously felt dangerous will begin to feel possible. The change occurs first in perception, then in behavior, then in the quality of the relationships that result. In the area of money and financial identity, the most effective threshold assumptions are not about amounts. They are about identity in relationship to flow. The assumption that money moves through your life with ease, that value you provide returns to you in appropriate forms, that financial stability is not a fragile achievement, but a natural condition. These identity-level assumptions at the threshold will shift the subconscious filter through which financial opportunity is either recognized or missed. Many financial transformations that appear sudden or lucky from the outside are the result of an inner perceptual shift that caused existing opportunities to become visible for the first time. The opportunity was already there. The filter changed, and the changed filter is built precisely at the level of identity assumption that the midnight method is designed to revise. In the area of physical health in the body, the assumptions must be approached with care and with the clear understanding that the practice is about the inner relationship with the body, not a substitute for appropriate physical care and medical support. The assumption that the body is capable, that it is a reliable and intelligent system working in your support, that you inhabit it with ease and appreciation rather than fear and surveillance. These assumptions can profoundly influence the baseline nervous system state from which the body operates each day. A body that is consistently approached at the threshold with the assumption of threat and failure will tend to remain in a higher baseline state of physiological stress. A body consistently approached at the threshold with the assumption of ease and inherent capability will tend to move toward a lower baseline stress state. The healing implications of this shift are not supernatural. They follow naturally from the well-understood relationship between nervous system state and physical well-being. In the area of creative work and discipline, the midnight method can be used to inhabit the identity of the person who creates with consistency, ease, and genuine expression. Not the identity of someone who produces extraordinary masterworks every day, but the identity of someone who shows up, who trusts the creative impulse, who does not require perfection before beginning. This humble, consistent creative identity, reinforced at the threshold, will produce far more actual creative output than any ambitious aspiration for greatness that is not accompanied by the felt assumption of the creator's right to create. In the area of spiritual sensitivity and intuition, the threshold practice can be directed toward the assumption that you are a being whose perceptual bandwidth is wide enough to receive the signals reality is continuously transmitting, that the signs are available to you. That synchronicity reaches you not as exception, but as the natural language of an aligned inner state. This assumption, practiced at the threshold, does not manufacture synchronicities, but it does expand the perceptual sensitivity through which they are recognized. The signs that were always there but went unnoticed begin to surface into awareness, not because the universe is doing something new, because the inner filter that was too contracted to allow them through has begun to open. The Personal Night Codex is the living document of this advanced practice. It is not a formal book. It is simply a record, kept in whatever form suits you, of the assumptions you have worked with, the mornings that followed them, the patterns you have noticed shifting, and the assumptions you are currently maintaining. It is a map of the revision in progress, a personal archive, a codex that belongs only to you and that grows in depth and accuracy as the practice deepens. Over months and years of consistent practice, the Personal Night Codex becomes one of the most profound documents you will ever possess. Not because of what it records, but because of what it reveals. The gradual, precise, unmistakable revision of the subconscious script that was running when you first opened this transmission, and the emergence, from beneath that old script, of the identity that was always there, waiting at the threshold of every night for the moment you finally decided to write something new. There is a moment each night when the guard at the gate of your mind begins to fall asleep. You know this moment now in a way you did not know it when this transmission began. You know what the gate is. You know what the guard is. You know what is on the other side of the gate, the archive, the chamber, the deep record that has been receiving its instructions from whatever you carried to the threshold in the dark, year after year, without your knowledge or your consent. But you are not walking toward that threshold tonight the same way you walked toward it before. Something has changed, not in the external world, not in the circumstances of your life. Something has changed in the quality of attention you are bringing to the doorway. You have learned the language of the threshold. You have learned that the final 20 minutes before unconsciousness are not empty. They are the writing room. And you are, for the first time, arriving with a pen in your hand. The patterns you recognized in the diagnostic mirror are not your identity. They were your script, and the script, however long it has been running, however deeply it has been pressed into the subconscious archive, is not permanent. It is a record. And records can be revised. They can be gently, patiently, consistently rewritten by a consciousness that understands what the threshold is and is willing to show up at it with intention rather than accident. Tonight, when the body begins its release, when the rational mind softens and the identity you have been defending begins to loosen its grip, you will be there. Not as a sleeper, as an author, You will have cleansed the day. You will have chosen the one assumption. You will have constructed the simple scene. You will have allowed the feeling to inhabit you from the inside. And you will release into the dark carrying that feeling as your final instruction, the last signal the subconscious receives before it begins its deepest work. The night is not your enemy. It never was. The night was always a workshop. The night was always the place where tomorrow was being quietly assembled. The only thing that has changed is that now you know this, and knowing it, you cannot unknow it. The awareness of the threshold is irreversible. Once you have seen the writing room, you cannot pretend it does not exist. You can only choose, each night, what you write in it. This is the purpose of the Night Codex. Not to add a technique to your collection, not to give you another method to try and abandon when the visible results are slow. To initiate you into a different relationship with consciousness itself. To show you that the architecture of your life is not being built only in the daylight hours. That the most powerful construction is happening in the hours of darkness, at the threshold between the waking self and the deeper self, in the room where the guard is asleep and the door stands briefly open. If this transmission reached you at the precise moment your own threshold was ready to be examined, keep this codex close. Return to it when the nighttime patterns feel resistant. Return to it when the morning weather grows heavy again. Return to it when you need to be reminded that the guard at the gate of your mind falls asleep every night, and that in that falling there is a window. A brief, sacred, entirely available window in which you are the one who decides what the deeper chamber receives. And if this codex found you at the right moment, if it arrived when something in you was already listening for the map of the threshold, then carry it forward. The third library holds more transmissions, more codices, more of the hidden mechanisms, forgotten protocols, and invisible feedback loops that the archive was built to preserve. The library does not close, and you have always held a key.